I'd like to start off with a commentary that came out in Nature last week by Roger Peng and Jeff Leake. They're both biostatisticians at Johns Hopkins. And this data pipeline, or sort of research pipeline, really captures the sort of the mission behind the project that I work on, is that there's a lot of scrutiny on the actual paper that's published and the statistics that are reported in a paper, not how we get there or what we do to the data, where the data come from, what kind of exploration is done with the data before we actually get to fitting some models to it. And that seems like a fairly easy challenge to start solving before we try to get to sort of the edge cases. And so the challenge when you look at a research paper is that it's sort of a very opaque object that you see after the end of a very long process, and you don't actually see all the different components that are part of it, like where the data came from, what happened to the data, and then how they were all combined to produce a narrative, which is that final publication. And so a handful of us started a project a few years ago called R Open Sci. There's 2 of us working on it full time. We have a ton of collaborators all over the world. We have 70-ish mature pieces of software. We have a lot more that are in various stages of development. And we are the single largest contributor of packages for the R statistical language to the central R archive network. And most of our code is in R. Some of our code is in C++. And most of our newer stuff is in Node. And what kind of software do we produce? So we try to address 4 separate challenges. One is getting to raw data that was used in a paper, raw data that was used as supplementary material for a particular project. And so there's no way I can list all the different data sources that we provide access to, but we support big data consortiums like Data1. We support academic data repositories like Dryad, which contain data for over 200 journals. We support nonprofit data repositories like the Internet Archive, CCAN, and also a ton of government data that's coming through the National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA, and a bunch of other organizations. More recently, we've been working on providing access to full text from scholarly journals. And so we actually support quite a few journals at this point. And hopefully by the end of this year, we will have tripled what we can provide access to. And so if you'd like to learn a little bit about the kinds of use cases that are possible, I would direct you to this article on the Revolution Analytics blog, where they used some of our tools in development to try and explore what's out there about the current Ebola outbreak. We also help you explore your data as you're trying to understand what's going on. So those of you that have used R before are probably super familiar with ggplot. We provide a way to work with interactive ggplots called ggplotly by collaborating with the people at Plotly. We also provide access to a lot of interactive data visualizations for spatial data, so leaflet maps, Mapbox maps. And we are trying to basically remove the need to use ArcGIS entirely by providing you all the spatial data tools that you need entirely within R. And then finally, before we can actually reuse data that anybody has produced, the data actually need to be machine readable by the time they're deposited into a data archive. It's just not tossing the data over the fence and being done with it. And this is not a particularly fun job. And so a lot of this has to be automated if people are actually going to make some effort to do this. And that is another problem that we're trying to solve, which is actual data publication. So we provide access to several data repositories like Figshare and Zenodo, tools like EML, which Carl is working on to document a lot of these data, and also work with data stores like DAT. Carissa from DAT is here, and you should go talk to her. And we're also trying to make life easier for researchers that have a certain workflow that they're not going to change. So if you're using Dropbox or Google Drive, we can still help pull all this information back into a Git repository, document everything, and then push them into actual persistent research archives. Like I said before, everything we produce is 100% open source. We're on GitHub and Twitter and most other places where we can have that username. Thank you.